How's it going? I'm Jared Gillis. Welcome to another All About RVs. Today, I want to share with you some comparisons and some information about what is the best RV heater to use out there and in what situation does each heater shine. So we're going to be talking about furnaces, diesel heaters, electric heaters. We're going to talk about the electric fireplace in the RV. We're going to talk about an extreme heater, catalytic heaters, Mr. Buddy, all the big ones that RVers love to use to keep their RV warm in the winter. And we're going to dispel some of the things that are often repeated out there that aren't necessarily correct for using heat inside of the RV. So let's jump right into the list because we have a ton of information that I want to be able to pass along to you. So we're going to start off with the RV furnace because most RVs out there already come with a furnace. Unless you have a Class A that has an aqua hot, we're really not going to get into that. But for the majority of the RVs that are out there, you're going to see a forced air furnace installed on the RV. Now the RV furnace is kind of the heavy hitter when it comes to heating the RV. It's the 28,000, this one's a 28,000 BTU unit. So it's going to raise the temperature on the inside of the RV the fastest out of any of the heaters that we talk about today. But it also does two things. Number one, it makes it comfortable inside of the RV so you can set the thermostat where you want it to, but it also delivers that heat to the wet areas of the RV. So the wet bay, the underbelly, the places that you have plumbing, so that in those sub-freezing temperatures, your pipes and your water doesn't freeze on the RV. I would say some of the drawbacks to the forced air furnace are people don't like the noise of it. It is probably the loudest heater that we have on the RV. And number two, it does go through electricity and propane. This is only 80% efficient. If you take the BTUs coming in and the BTUs going out, it's an 80% efficient heater. To put some numbers to that, I tried to measure how much it used on propane and electricity the other night after we turned off the heat pump inside of the RV and switched over to the furnace. So outside it was 23 degrees, and what it did throughout the night is it kicked on quite a bit, but we used 26 amp hours of electricity from the battery bank, and we used 2.59 pounds. I weighed the tank at the beginning of the night and then I weighed it the next morning. And so really that meant we spent $1.57 on propane in order to heat the RV for that evening. So 26 amp hours, that's like a quarter of a 100 amp hour battery. And then it was just under $1.60 for propane for that one evening. Now, one of the things I often hear about the RV furnace is that it's a wet heat because one of the byproducts when you're burning propane, like the furnace does, is it lets off moisture. But there's a problem with that thought, is all that combustion is actually happening on the outside. So we have an air intake, we have an exhaust, and so that moisture that is going to be created as a byproduct is expelled to the outside. None of that moisture makes it to the inside of the RV. So it's not adding any moisture or any of that extra condensation that you will see on the inside of the RV. It's not adding to that problem. So the RV furnace, some people don't like the noise, some people don't like how much it consumes, so they want to find something a little bit more efficient. But it is a good heavy hitter when it comes to raising the temperature inside of the RV and heating it. So let's look at our next option. Now, another heater that has similarities to the furnace that people have been installing on their RVs and are extremely popular in the van life Class B type of an RV are these diesel heaters. Now, after installing this diesel heater on our project trailer, I think I understand why people are putting these in the Class B RVs, is because you have a small little thermostat, you have one vent coming into the space, it's really not that loud, it doesn't have a ton of power consumption, and if you can tie right into your fuel system that's already on that vehicle, then you don't even need an additional fuel cell and that thing can go for a lot longer. You never even really have to worry about filling it up because when you go to fill up your vehicle, you would fill up that fuel source also so that your heater can run. So it's a very convenient solution for a Class B kind of an RV. This one we installed is a larger one. It's 27,000 BTU. So it's almost as big as our furnace on the RV. And it heats this 26-foot uninsulated trailer, and it does well holding the temperature and keeping it warm inside. It's a bit like your furnace because you have your air intake on the outside, you have the exhaust on the outside, so that combusted air actually doesn't mix with any of the air on the inside of the RV. For the inside portion of the RV, it has an air intake, the return air side, and then your vent to expel the heat inside of the RV. So you have that combustion happening on the outside, so you don't have to worry about opening vents or anything like that. It doesn't use a ton of power, so when it was on low, I was seeing that it was pulling around around 10 to 15 watts, and on high, it was around 35 to 40 watts for that blower unit inside of this diesel heater. So this was a bit of a budget unit. This one cost me $150. So really a lot of heating for a pretty low cost, but they can range all the way up to $1,200 depending on which unit you're looking at. Now, a couple of side notes and things you'd want to consider before you got a diesel heater is they're not really meant to be used at higher elevation, or they need to be adjusted as you go up in elevation. So there's a way to do that in the adjustment. I haven't done it at this point, but if you don't, it can soot up more, and then you'd have to have more maintenance on your diesel heater. So if you're going to be above that 8,000 mark often with your RV, this may not be the heater that you would want in that situation. Number two, there is a little bit of noise from it. I think that it's much quieter than the furnace, but some people don't like the ticking sound of the fuel pump on the outside. It can almost sound like a dripping water. It's just kind of a tick, tick. There are some workarounds and things you can do there, but that's something you'd want to be aware of. And then something just specific to this unit, I didn't see an easy way to be able to convert this over from Celsius to Fahrenheit, but that's really not a big deal. But it does heat the inside of this trailer well, and it puts out a decent amount of heat. Oh, that is one thing with the thermostat. You can crank it up to where you're going to bring in a lot of heat, but if you wanted to dial it back, I've never actually seen it turn off. So if you bring it all the way down to the lowest setting, it'll bring it to low. It'll be on low for the fan. It won't be using quite as much fuel, but it never actually shuts off like the furnace does on the inside of the RV or the heat pump in the RV. So that's just something to be aware of. If you want it to turn off, you have to turn off the thermostat. And as far as fuel consumption goes, this uses more fuel, I think, than some of the smaller diesel and gasoline heaters that are out there because it is a larger unit and because this is an uninsulated trailer, so we were going through more fuel because of that. But I was adding about a gallon to a gallon and a quarter a day when we were down in the mid-20s at night and trying to keep it warm in here. So when you put all of that together, the high elevation limitation, the sound of the pump on the outside, but the amount of heat that you get out of something that is so small and pretty simple to install and can tie right into a Class B fuel source, you can see why some situations this works really well, and then some RVs it may not be the heat source of choice. But that's what's great about this list. I'm going to put links down in the description to everything that we're talking about today, because some of these are going to work good for some RVers and some are not. So find the solution that works good for you and your style of RVing. Now let's talk about some electric options. A lot of RVs are coming with these electric fireplaces in there, and they do put off some heat. It's basically a space heater that's built into a fake electric fireplace. Now we like it for a couple of reasons. We like to be able to heat just that main living part of the RV. It has a low and a high setting. So the low setting, it's going to be drawing 720 watts, and on the high setting, it's going to be 1,340 watts. And it gets rid of some of the problems that you have with space heaters inside of RVs. Some of the big problems with space heaters is using them improperly, using them with the power strip or an extension cord or putting the cord underneath a rug. There are fires that happen with space heaters inside RVs when they are used improperly. So I'm not opposed to using space heaters inside RVs, but you have to pay attention to how you're using it and use it properly. So we use this in the back bunk room because it does get a little bit chilly back there. We did this one because it has a thermostat on there, so we can dial in the temperature that we want it to set at, and it's not just on all night. I do wish that I could find one where I can adjust the thermostat and have it on the low setting, because that would be sufficient for that back room. So it's only drawing the 700 watts. That would be kind of like that low setting on that electric fireplace. This one, when you set the thermostat, it goes on high. So it kicks on and it doesn't run for as long, but it does supplement the heat and keeps it at that proper temperature in the back. Now, as far as electric heat, I actually prefer the heat pump, and we have been using that a lot this year, and it's come in extremely handy. And I think the heat pump can be a little bit misunderstood, tried to use in the wrong situations, and it won't perform when it gets extremely cold outside, but I have been surprised at how cold our heat pump actually does work. So from my experience and seeing how much it affects the temperature on the inside of the RV and how much power it's actually using, the heat pump, when it's above 40 degrees outside, definitely gives us more heat than we can get out of the electric fireplace or one of these space heaters put on high. We get more for the watts that we're using for power for the BTUs put inside the RV. I kind of wanted to find the edge of where it really wasn't practical to use it anymore. So when it was 29 degrees outside, you wouldn't even think that you could use the heat pump. We were getting close to 100 degrees. It was bouncing between 98 and 100 degrees coming out of the heat pump. It's really not that efficient to be able to use it at that temperature on the outside because that heat exchange really isn't working that well. And the heat pump works off the premise of running your AC backwards. Something that I hear repeated about heat pumps is you can't use them below 50 degrees. I've even read where you can't use them below 40 degrees. We've often used ours around 35 degrees. That's where we've noticed that ours kind of gains traction and is working pretty well to produce heat inside the RV. But I know mini splits out there can go much colder, but we've used it below freezing and it still produced heat inside the RV. So something to keep in mind, try out your heat pump and it might save you on having to not use as much propane for heating your RV if your RV has a heat pump. And if you don't have a heat pump and you need to replace your AC, it might be something to look into getting one with a heat pump. Now, you don't always have the luxury of having shore power when you're using your RV in the winter. So some people will switch over to something like this, the portable buddy heater, or the Olympian heater, which is a catalytic heater. So this oftentimes gets grouped into the catalytic heaters, and that's one of the misnomers. This really isn't a true catalytic heater. There are some similarities, but they aren't exactly the same chemical process. This is actually burning the propane that you're connecting in here when you're using these small bottles or even connecting it to a larger 20-pound tank. This is burning that propane. If you want to look at a catalytic heater, people often go with the Olympian one, and those are much more expensive than these portable buddy heaters. But these do work to heat the inside of the RV with a few side notes. First off, this is going to be more efficient than your RV furnace, but you're going to be burning the fuel inside and it's going to be using oxygen. So you do need to open a vent or a window to allow more oxygen to come in so that it's safe to use. It does have some other safety features built into it, a tip over device that will turn it off. It does have an O2 sensor in here, so if it does use too much of the oxygen inside the RV, it should shut off. So you do want all your sensors working on the inside. So your carbon monoxide detector, your smoke detector, a propane detector, all those things you want functioning properly on the inside of the RV. And the second thing is this will produce moisture. Remember, when you're burning that propane, there will be moisture coming from that. So this will put moisture on the inside of the RV. Again, opening the vent will help with some of that moisture getting out, but you do decrease in efficiency when you're opening up a vent. I'm not saying you're gonna lose all your heat out the window or out the vent, but it does decrease the efficiency to a degree. If you were going to ask my personal recommendation, I would not sleep inside the RV with this burning and with this running. I would run it in the evening and then run it in the morning, but I wouldn't use it while I am sleeping. That's just my personal preference. I do like this heater. It does feel good. The heat coming off this, it's a radiant heat. So I do like it. I do think it's great as a backup. I just don't use it as a sole solution inside of the RV, especially at night. This does have two settings on it. So 9,000 BTUs on the high setting, 4,000 BTUs on the low setting. And I know that some people that use this as more of a primary heat source inside of the RV, oftentimes they'll switch over to that Olympian, which is a true catalytic heater. Now, this last heater is this extreme heater, and this is coming from the marine industry over into the RV industry. So this is used to help in freeze protection situations. So this is a little bit different. It's not to keep the inside of the RV or you comfortable inside of the RV. This is to keep your lithium batteries or your pipes from freezing. And I have to say that I'm very impressed with it. It is not cheap, but there is a lot of safety built into this. So I would not ever recommend using a space heater in a compartment where you're going to leave the RV and you still need to protect your lithium batteries or you need to protect your plumbing. But this is one that you could actually leave because it has a completely different way of heating. So this fits in a space where people were actually burning their boats down because they were just using a standard space heater and they would have a problem and they weren't near their boat and it would actually burn their boat down and sometimes the boat next to them in the slip. But this has the PTC heating element in it and it has a thermostat in the back to be able to keep it safe and above freezing in those engine compartments. So this is even meant to go in a place where there might be fuel, and so it's not going to ignite that fuel. So you can use these in extreme circumstances. So I wanted to test this out underneath our RV. So one night we were getting down to around 23, and so we just had the furnace on. You could see that our temperature down there got really close to freezing. It got to 33. Now, we're living in the RV, we're full time. So the next night I wanted to see if this kept it above that point. So I put it down in that bay. I put a sensor farther away from it, and you can see that this kept that underbelly underneath the RV at a much more manageable temperature to where I wasn't worried about those pipes freezing. So this was extremely impressive to be able to see it heat a large cavity as large as that was with zero insulation. So it passed the test, getting down to 23 degrees outside and making that entire underbelly warmer. So they have a few different sizes that you can get, and this is their larger one. This is the 800 watt version. They did send this to me to test out. They didn't ask for a video, but I am very impressed with this heater. Like I said, it's not cheap, but from what it does an amazing job. Now that brings me to the point of heaters that I would use when I'm not at the RV. So if you're going to be away from the RV, I would have no problem using the furnace on the RV. I'd have no problem using the heat pump on the RV. I'd have no problem using this extreme heater on the RV with all the safety features built into it. Those are really the three heaters that I would use inside of the RV to keep it warm so it's not freezing cold when you get back to it. The heaters that I would never use in the RV when I'm not there and actually watching and maintaining them are the Mr. Buddy, the Olympian, so the catalytic heater. I wouldn't use any space heaters. We don't use the electric fireplace, even though that's wired right into and mounted into the RV. Those are just heaters that I just don't use in the RV unless I'm actually there in that room. But I think that's gonna do it for today. That's kind of the list of all the heaters that we have experience with and that we have used inside of the RV, and we've seen a lot of RVers out there using to keep the inside of the RV warm, comfortable, and your pipes and batteries protected. I know that was a lot of information to throw in here, but I wanted to give you a compiled list of different heaters that you can choose from and look at the pros and the cons and see why you would pick one over the other for your specific situation. So like I said, that's going to do it for today. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos about RVing, hit that subscribe button. And if we don't see you on the road, hopefully we will. See you next video. Like when you power it on,
Start heating.
I always think it says start eating. Like I want to go eat now. And then when you turn it off, stop eating. It tells me when to stop eating.
I wish you a safe journey.
It wants me to have a safe journey. How great is that?